better to vote for someone you believe in and lose than someone you don't believe in and win. Now, what do you mean by that? Is that a kind of will-o'-the-wisp, airy, idealistic, impractical statement? It isn't at all. Basically, if you don't vote for people you believe in and are willing to lose, you never build for the future. Again, look at all the losses of the Women's Suffrage Party and the Liberty Anti-Slavery Party and all the populist Greenback Party and Labor Party in the late 19th century, Norman Thomas, Socialist Party. The other thing is, if you vote for people who you don't believe in and you win, they don't take your vote seriously because you've signaled desperation. You've signaled you're going for the least worst, even though you don't like the least worst. In this case, no matter how bad the Democrats are, no matter how much they turn our government over to giant corporations, no matter how often they oppose single payer as a party or a living wage or just lots of other things that you know about, you'll vote for them if you're a least worst voter because the Republicans are worse. Now, guess who's pulling both parties 24/7 in the other direction? It's the corporate interest. The minute you vote least worst, if you don't demand A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and pull them in your direction, which most least worst voters never do because they're so freaked out by the worst that they, in effect, surrender and give their vote unconditionally to someone like John Kerry, as the anti-war movement did when they shut down in 2004 because they didn't want to embarrass Kerry because he wanted to send more soldiers to Iraq and wouldn't have pulled out of Fallujah. Remember that one on the first debate? Your vote isn't pulling in the other direction. So you're basically setting the stage every 4 years. Both parties get worse by your own yardsticks. And the trouble with that attitude is there's no breaking point because there'll always be one party not quite as bad as the other, but both pretty bad. There'll always be a least worst. And unless you have a breaking point, as Matt and I have, and lots of other people now, you don't have a breaking point, you are a political slave to the least worst choice. You might as well put a little nose ring in your nose with a little tether and give it to your least worst party. And it's not just Democrats. Republicans do the same thing. A lot of libertarians can't stand the Republicans, but they think the Democrats are worse. All right, so just look at Eugene Debs' second. This one is really haunting. At the end of his career, he was asked by a reporter, "What's your greatest regret, Mr. Debs?" He looked at him and he said, "My greatest regret? My greatest regret is that under our Constitution, the American people can have almost anything they want, but it just seems like they don't want much of anything at all." You know what that is? That means, for a variety of reasons you and I know, we have among the lowest expectation levels in the world, proportionate to what we could have, proportionate to our wealth, technology, unused solutions, energy, housing, public transit, agricultural dechemicalization, all of these things. And that, to me, is where we should start in the 2008 election. Not going to start with a slogan, yes, we can. Not going to start with hope. We're going to start with the self-realization that unless we raise our expectation level, nothing changes. Because without expectation levels going up, dissatisfaction levels don't go up. Without dissatisfaction levels going up, you don't express a willingness, you meaning other, you're active. You wouldn't be here Sunday if you weren't active. You don't spend the time, the energy, and the skill to turn the political system around. So it starts with expectation levels. Now let me give you an example of Western Europe and the US in 1945. In 1945, and this is really what Debs meant, although he was long gone by then. In 1945, we were the supreme economic, political, and military power in the world. World War II, over, okay. In 1945, Western Europe was rubble. Cities devastated, public services smashed, people trying to avoid starvation. In 1945 and in future years after that, through their trade unions, their social democratic parties, their multi-party system, their proportional representation, their instant runoff voting, here's what they demanded and got by law. None of which we have today, 60-some plus years later. None of which. Here we go. They demanded and they got universal health care. They demanded and they got a living wage. There was almost abolished poverty. So we have poverty. They demanded and got decent pensions. They demanded and got university-free education. They demanded and got 4 weeks to 6 weeks paid vacation. By law, all of them, not just union members. They demanded and got laws that made it easy to form trade unions, unlike our notorious anti-union, anti-worker Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, still on the books. They demanded and got decent public transit, paid maternity leave, paid family sick leave, decent daycare. All people had those rights. We don't have any of them. And we talk about the richest country in the world, the greatest democracy in the world. Why? Because our expectation levels were not high enough? Why? Because we bought this market fundamentalism. We bought this, the poor are poor because they're lazy and they don't work, even though the poor work harder than all of us. You want to see what I mean? Why don't you go in the fields and harvest the crops? You don't think they work hard enough. Why don't you see how they work? You see them all over. Low-income people are the hardest workers in the country. They often have to work 2 jobs. And we've bought into this ideology that anyone can be rich. Anyone can be a millionaire. You want to be a millionaire? Is that a title of a program? We have these reality shows. We can hit the jackpot. And the politicians play on that harp. They flatter us, to fool us, to flummox us. They lie to us again and again with their little slogans, just because they happen to be different people. Here we go again. How many times do we want to go through this rhetoric? Because most people are cynics about the political system. And that's exactly what the power structure wants. You know why? Here's the profile of a cynic. The politicians are all crooks. They don't mean anything to me. Why should I even vote? We know who rules this country. And then the cynic proceeds to appear even more sophisticated and drop out of politics. Either not voting, half of the people don't even vote, or they just go sort of ceremonially and they vote for Democrat Republican because their grandparents voted Democrat Republican, hereditary voters. Whenever you see a cynic, you see a political slave. When you see a skeptic, you see someone who is capable of charging back. And cynicism is a kind of sophistication, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, we know what the score is. We're not going to play that game. But if you don't play that game, someone else is playing that game. When young people come up to me and they say, well, we're not turned on politics. I say, oh, really? So why don't you read history? Why don't you read history? Because if you don't turn on to politics, politics is going to turn on you in a very, very disagreeable way, and is already doing so. Because you're out of college, and you have health insurance, you have affordable housing. What about your student loan with the gouging interest rates of Sallie Mae and all the adverse fine print? What about your job? White-collar jobs now can be outsourced to India and China. Anything dealing with software, architectural, engineering, accounting, can all go to hardworking people over there making 10% of what you would settle for. You see what happens when politics turns on you?